Welcome in to Flag for Discussion, episode 11 for Monday, June 23rd. My name is Farbod Merkazi. He's Jace Hatfield as always. We got a pretty fun show planned for everybody. We're talking about the Big Ten, the SEC. Everyone was talking about how they are the power brokers in college football. Well, they're kind of at an impasse right now. They're fighting. They're beefing a little bit. We're going to talk about all the ins and outs of that. Clark Brooks last month released the top 100 returning players list. A lot of interesting numbers in there. If you haven't checked it out at this point, I don't know if you know who the number one quarterback is on that list. It makes sense if you think about it, but we gotta have that conversation. And then the program report, we got some big hitters today, Jace. It's gonna be a fun show. Stay tuned. Keep everything right here, whether you're on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. This is episode 11. This is going to be a lot of fun. Jace, what's going on?
Not much. I had a fun Friday night with some friends. I know we're hanging on with some coffee and liquid IVs here, but we're excited to get going.
Right. I'm at my fiance's childhood home. Had some fun last night, and one of the best parts of a podcast is it makes you get up and it makes you recover really quickly. So if I say anything outlandish, or if I forget what I'm saying or lose my train of thought, please bear with me.
That's Carbod's third whiskey talking.
That was my third whiskey talking. All right. So mommy and daddy are fighting, Jace. Big Ten, the SEC are not able to come to agreement about what should be the next wave of the college football playoff and the expansion. We came on the show maybe a month ago talking about how the college football playoff is probably going to expand to 16, and we broke that down exactly what it was going to be. But we mainly talked about the AQ model, which for everyone at home is the automatic qualifier model, where there are specific criteria, just like how if you're a baseball fan, you got to win your division in the MLB, or you got to earn one of the wild card spots. But there's specific criteria to make that. If you're an NFL fan, you got to win your division. There's a couple wild card spots. You have to meet those minimum criteria to earn those spots in the playoff. The Big Ten wants the AQ model, and the SEC wanted the AQ model. 3 weeks ago, the SEC went into their coaches' meetings, and the coaches started pushing back against the AQ model, and the conference did right by their coaches, and they're backing away from that. The SEC now wants a 5-by-11 model for the 16-team playoff. I'm going to talk a lot, and I have so far. Basically, what the 5-by-11 means is it's the same thing we just did with 12-team playoff. 5 auto bids, but instead of 7 at-large spots, there's 11. At this point, is there a perfect solution in your mind for the college football playoff expansion? I have an answer. I think it's the AQ model, but I want to hear your thought.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate to see some compromise here, because part of the Big Ten too is they would require the power conferences to go to a 9 conference games, which I really like. I want that to be standard across all. I don't want the SEC to be doing 8 still. So I want to take that from the Big Ten. But I kind of like the idea of my one fear with doing the automatic qualifying scenario is, are we just going to be going back to the BCS era where it was, there's pros and cons to having a computer. Like back then, the model was terrible. So it was just picking SEC schools, basically. So I think we would need to avoid a scenario where the criteria is skewed towards favoring the Big Ten or the SEC. Obviously, it would probably favor both if it's favoring one. So I think we got to be careful of what's this criteria going to be? How are we going to determine it? How are we going to weight different things? How are we going to calculate models? On the SEC side, that large spot sounds fun on paper, but I think we all have seen this play out in college football where there's a lot of bias that goes into who gets selected for spots and who doesn't. Especially because oftentimes the committee is like, you could have 9 SEC ADs in the committee. Who do you think they're going to take for the 11 at-large bids? You know, they're going to take eight SEC schools. So I think it's important to maybe draw a little bit from both. I think both conferences are going to try and I think the ACC or SEC is going to figure out a way to get those 11 at-large spots to completely favor them. I'm sure the Big Ten is going to get this automatic qualifying calculation to greatly benefit them. I know they're both pulling for it, so a compromise here would be nice. And maybe even some more input from like the Pac-12 or the ACC, the Big 12. Like, don't let the Big Ten and the SEC just only have this conversation. I know they have the power, but maybe give some input of like how we can make this fair, and then we can see if the Big Ten and the SEC retaliate from that. Then we're all right. Yeah, they're in it for themselves. They're not in it to make a good money.
So I think this is a conversation. There's like a multi-pronged conversation here. First of all, there's never going to be any solution to college football playoff expansion that benefits the ACC, the Big 12, or Group of Five schools more than it benefits the SEC or the Big 10. So,
Yeah,
unfortunately,
sadly.
for anyone who wants to be a traditionalist or wants to promote fair play and all the hunky-dory stuff you want to talk about, that's not going to happen in college football anymore. The SEC and the Big 10 are going to be the power brokers. They're going to be the ones that are going to get the lion's share of this decision-making power. And the other conferences, better for worse, will have to play along and sit around and be like, okay, that works for us. You brought up a really good point about the 9-game college football, 9-game SEC conference schedule. In general, for everyone at home who's not listening, the SEC is the main power conference that doesn't play 9 conference games. They play 8, and they have another cupcake game in the middle of their season. So the SEC basically wants to say, like, why do we need to add a 9th conference game? Why do we need to add 9 losses to our record if getting into the playoff is going to, our record matters so much to get into the playoff? Not just for like our individual teams like the Georgias of the world who are going to get in, or the Texas of the world, but like an Ole Miss, if they're 8-3, but your conference record has 9 more losses in there, then the strength of record that the committee would have to use for your conference is going to be that much worse. So Josh Pate did a really good bid on this earlier this week, but basically from the article from Ross Dellinger for Yahoo Sports and like reading about this more, the 5x11 model that the SEC wants is essentially just a grift to try to get as many SEC teams in the playoff. And I can't fault them for wanting that. In general, it's like, okay, we'll get our 5 auto bids. We'll get one team in there from our conference champ in there. Sure. And then they're basically saying, since our strength of record is going to be so high, we'll go to the ninth conference game. But that means our strength of schedule and strength of record is going to be so good that we're going to be favored for 4, 5, 6 of those at-large spots. So they're basically saying the AQ model might be limiting them in general, in terms of like in terms of potential entrance into the college football playoff compared to what, like, if they just go for it at large. I think the other prong of this is anyone at home who wants traditional sports to come back, you got to give up the fight now.
That's the hardest pill for me to swallow.
I agree.
I know that I need to give it up. It's so hard because it feels like you're giving up what you've loved for so long. But you're right.
I agree.
We will never go back.
No, I will never go back. So then I guess the question is, how do we go forward? And how do we find a solution that works? So my question is, in what professional sport, not professional, what major sport, college or professional, would it make sense to say, hey, we're going to have this group of 7 guys or 12 guys choose who's in our playoff, rather than like having specific, defined, and outlined criteria to getting into your playoff, just like all the professional sports have. I get it. College sports are different. That's part of what makes them fun, and that's part of the fabric that weaves you and I so deeply into college athletics, not just football. The baseball selection process is weird. I never understand it. The basketball selection process is fun, but it's also weird. I never understand that. The college football playoff selection process has always been this group of people release their official first rankings in like week 8, and then you really start seeing where the college football playoff committee is leaning, and then all of a sudden they choose who's in the playoff rather than who is quote unquote deserving. I just think having automatic qualifiers in the past would have made me throw up as a college football fan. And like having this criteria in the past. But I think if I'm looking forward, if we go 5x11, we're just in the same situation we are now. We're just going to have the same problems we do now. And the seeding will still be a problem. There's going to be teams that should have made it that don't still. But not that I'm going to not care as much if like the 17th best team in the country doesn't make the playoff. But at the same time, I think with the AQ model, no one will argue. Like you could say this team deserves to make the playoff, but you're like, well, they didn't win the games that meant for them to get in.
Lane Kiffin will argue, regardless of what the model is, if he's not making the playoff. I'm with you. I think the automatic qualifier full model changes things for the better. I think you're right. Like if we go with the 11 at-large spots, inevitably we're going to have a season where the SEC doesn't get as many teams as they want in. And then they're just going to do it again. Now we need to go to 24. This whole thing sucks. We're going to 24. And then we're going to have the same conversation. And then they're going to complain once not all 14 of them get in. And we're going to just keep doing this until it's basically just an SEC playoff. I would love to avoid that. And I know everyone else would. I don't even think even like all the SEC fans would enjoy that kind of model. So I think the automatic qualifying is kind of exciting. It gets us into a more straightforward model. Something that would be nice, or a part of that would be cool. Then this is we're not sponsored by College Football 26, but hey, EA, if you need some sponsors, let us know. That's all I'll say.
Yeah,
but if you could in a game like that, if you could like customize how the playoff is decided, it'd be kind of fun to tinker with like your ideas and kind of see how it comes out. But the other thing I was thinking, if everyone plays a 9-game conference schedule, at least the Power 4 conferences, then you could do like week 1, the Big 10 is going to play the Big 12. And then week 2, you play the SEC. And week 3, you play the ACC. Obviously, it doesn't have to be in order. It could be spread out throughout the calendar year. But it would be nice to then have to play head-to-heads of their conferences, because then you can start to get like much more fair common grounds of how we're evaluating teams. Because last year, there wasn't a whole lot of crossover in the regular season of these Power 4 conferences. And then we got most of those crossover games in the playoff, which were pretty one-sided. First and bowl games in general, which also went really one-sided. And I think like that was a scenario where like the SEC last year really thought that they deserved all of these opportunities, and they went 1-5 in bowl games against the Big Ten. So, I think that at the all qualifying model gives us a little bit better of like objectivity as much as we can use that word in college football. But I would love to tinker around with the ideas in like a College Football 26 and like let us customize the way we do our playoffs in it.
I think the only reason that's not an option is the college football fans are probably second to MLB fans of nerd level.
That's true.
And I would go in there and I would try to come up with the weirdest playoff just to see if something works. And then we would come onto this podcast and be like, this is the 10-year sample size of my playoff proposal in College Football 26. Yeah, I don't think either the qualifier, the AQ model, or the 5x11 is perfect. They're both anti what we loved about college football from the beginning, but it's more like looking ahead. And when we're talking about one of the best parts of college football, and you and I have talked about this for at least 10 podcasts, and for a long time longer past that. But one of the best parts of college football is that week 2 game. If you lose, that's gonna suck. That week 3 game, if you lose, that's gonna suck. Both of these models have an aspect of it doesn't suck as much if you lose those games, but I believe with the AQ model, because there's certain criteria to get you into the playoff, you're going to be a lot more hurt by games. Some games will still have their intensity. It's not going to be like it was pre-2022, where if you lose this game, you might not make the playoff. But it will still be intense with the AQ model because you're like, we're fighting for that 3 spot. We're fighting for that 2 spot in the conference to play for the right to make the playoff. I think when the at-larges come in, there's going to be still so much crap up in the air of what's the committee prefer. Here's an Indiana team that went 11-1 in the Big Ten, but here's Ole Miss that went 9-3 in the SEC. Who deserves to get in? And that, like, at that point, you're having the same deserved versus earned argument, and games aren't mattering as much anymore. I get it. The playoff gives you great games, but at the same time, like, my biggest argument in general is I don't want the individual games of college football to lose their importance. I don't want Texas, Ohio State week 1 to lose its importance. I don't want Michigan, Oklahoma week 2 to lose its importance. I don't want Oregon, Penn State to lose its importance. All those games are still going to have tons of fans caring about it, but I think it'll mean even more if we just sit tight with like the AQ model and actually define what it means to make the playoff rather than guess every year.
Yeah, I completely agree. If we go at large, we're just next year it's gonna be 20, and that's gonna be 24, and that's gonna be 32, and then we're just gonna be March Madness, and then eventually they're like, wait, let's just do a regular season and pick the team that went the
Bro, they're
best in regular
expanding
season.
March Madness. Like,
I
they're
heard
expanding
about
March
that.
Madness.
That's
like,
if we touch that, that is like that is the most corporate greed of all time. If we touch March Madness, that is like
if they
universal in America, universally that's kind of, I guess, goofy to say, but everyone agrees that is a perfect model. I don't think anybody wants that change. So if they're changing that, that's the epitome of greed, and that would sicken me.
If they make college football team players and teams play that long, that might be, I know they're over 18, but that might be child abuse. Like, if you make them play a football season that long, like, you would have to study their brains probably. Like, that would probably be what, 30 games?
Running backs would be like torched by the time they're 19 years old.
Yeah. This is one of those things that, like, it doesn't deserve a massive conversation, but at the same time, it's, like I said, it's mommy and daddy. It's the Big Ten and the SEC fighting, and everyone expected them to be the power brokers in college football, and I think they still will be. I don't think this changes anything, but I think this is the SEC realizing, we're still the number 1 conference in the sport, and if we just keep things as is, we're going to get more teams in if without automatic qualifiers being in, rather than with them in there. Because the AQ model, for better for worse, it would limit them to 4 teams. But the at-large model is like, what if there's a year that has like 9 SEC teams in there? You know?
Yeah.
Speaking of some SEC teams, there was a really interesting list, and I've tried to throw this into our podcast each of the last like 4 weeks, but we've had other stuff come up that has been more timely and prevalent. But it's a really interesting list from Clark Brooks. Every year he does of On3, he releases his top 100 players entering 2025. So this won't include freshmen or new players. His list will start out at Jeremiah Smith, Dylan Stewart, South Carolina, Caleb Downs, Ohio State, Colin Simmons, Texas, Sam Leavitt, ASU is at number 5 on his list. So his number 1 quarterback returning in 2025 is Sam Leavitt. I'll give you the full quarterback list too. He has Sam Leavitt at number 1, Lenora Sellers, Arch Manning, DJ Lagway, Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, John Mateer, Nico, Josh Hoover, TCU. Jace, you might have a problem with that, him being so low. Taylon Green, Arkansas. I can't believe he's that high. But okay, that's the list. first off, just react to the list in general. I don't know if you have it pulled up. It's a really fascinating concept of it's not just the best players, but like most impactful. He puts a lot of criteria into how he ranks these guys. Do you love the list? Do you hate the list? What stands out to you?
So first, I like that his list is kind of he's not just like day one who's the best, but I like that he's kind of thinking like by the end of the season, this is how we're going to see people. Because that's kind of I think that shows more merit in your list. So I've always enjoyed that about him. He also has done the last couple years lists were pretty good. Like all the takes that people were like that's a hot take ended up a lot of them proving to be true. Uh, Jeremiah Smith at one, obviously, duh. I would have Caleb Downs at two, Dylan Stewart at three. I don't really care either way. Colin Simmons, I don't even know if Anthony Hill might have been my Texas defensive player pick for number four, but I'm fine with
I
that
think that
one.
just means Texas is gonna have a good defense.
Yeah, their defense is
The
going to be disgusting.
real quick, the only argument I'd have against your Dylan Stewart with Caleb Downs is I think Dylan Stewart could be the number one player in the country. Like Jeremiah Smith is awesome,
That's
but
true. He
Dylan Stewart
plays
is a
defensive
wrecking
end
ball.
is the killing position too.
and and it's not necessarily. I don't think Caleb Downs should be a top pick next year. Like he's unbelievable,
Yeah,
but safety versus edge in terms of importance of position,
yeah,
I think that's what put Dylan Stewart over Caleb Downs. Sorry,
I
go ahead.
agree. I think no, you're good. The positional value matters there for sure with Dylan Stewart. I think that's probably why Colin Simmons is also up there. The really for the first issue I have, which is a big one, is Sam Levitt at five. I am by no means an anti Sam Levitt person. He would have been in my top 10 QBs, probably more in the back half, but I don't think he is. There are five quarterbacks immediately I would take over Sam Levitt for the 2025 season. I mean, start with Lenore Sellers. I think he has the highest ceiling. I don't know if he's the safest floor. Cade Klubnik at 8 for QBs. I think he was number 33 total. Cade Klubnik is probably the safest bet at a QB you have this year. Former five-star recruit, so he has a really high ceiling, incredibly high floor. He's got Antonio Williams back, so I think like the production's kind of like set in stone with his wide receiver one again. Arch Manning at number 3 QB at 10, I don't love. But like I said, this is a list he's projecting out for the future, so I respect it. I'm not. I think Texas is going to be really good. And it's one of those things where Arch Manning gets more credit for the Texas success than he deserves. Like that, I think it's one of those like any average QB in the country could take that defense and go 11-1. So like but it's Arch Manning. Like if they're just halfway decent, he's going to get a lot of praise. Carson Beck at 7 over Cade Klubnik, John Mateer, and Josh Hoover was disgusting, especially coming off of a Tommy John surgery. Like that's unbelievable. And in Miami, they'll have a really good O-line. They'll have a good run game. The passing game is going to be a lot of transfer, fill in the hole wide receivers, transfer, UCL injury quarterback. I don't love the call there. And then Josh Hoover at 88. I'm just happy he got a shout. As people are probably learning, he's my guy. I'm happy he got a shout in the list. I would have him higher. When Josh Hoover's in New York this next Heisman campaign, the country will see.
Hey, look, you've been projecting that for 3 shows in a row now. I'll buy the Josh Hoover hype. What I don't understand in general about this list is Sam Levitt's awesome, and I wonder, Sark, if you want to come on, we'd love to talk to you. But I wonder if part of it is the combination of coach and quarterback. Sam Levitt's a great quarterback, but I think Kenny Dillingham makes him even that much better. Drew Aller, I'm high on Drew Aller this year. I know a lot of people want to give him shit. He's awesome. If he's consistent, he has all the traits, and he has better personnel around him than Sam Levitt does. I don't understand where
Yeah,
the projection is there. Lenore Sellers could be a literal human wrecking ball this year, and then
yeah.
Cade Klubnik, just like Josh Hoover's your guy. I'm not really. Josh Hoover's more of a what's it called?
Dark horse, long
A
shot.
dark horse. So I'm not doing something special picking Cade Klubnik as my guy, but I just think Clemson's going to be special this year, and Cade Klubnik's going to be part of that reason why. I'm shocked
Mm-hmm.
that he's 33rd in the country. I think part of that is just because there has to be like longevity wearing it out, kind of like how we do our program report, where like if a coach has had a really good last 2 years, but he's been at the school for 5 years and he was meh or mediocre for like 3 years before that, we have to take that into account. Maybe he has to take into account the couple years before it clicked for Cade. But I think now that it has clicked, Cade Klubnik should be number one. Like in terms of experience, talent,
I agree with that.
supporting cast. That's in my head. Cade Klubnik's one. I think, like you said, Cade is probably the least risky choice to be at number one, because if I just go down his top 12 quarterback was Sam Levitt. Was last year a fluke? Who knows? I'm not saying it was, but that's a risk. Lenora Sellers,
Yeah.
He's awesome, but he can be turnover prone. He also can run himself into trouble a lot. Arch Manning, we don't even know what he is yet. DJ Lagway, people only remember the flashes of brilliance last year. They don't remember the craziness or like the moments.
He was awful to start the year.
Yeah, that you put it better than I could. Garrett Nussmeier, he's probably one of the safest options there too. Drew Aller, he's kind of safe, kind of not. Carson Beck, is he going to come back from injury? Well, John Mateer, is it going to mesh at Oklahoma for him? Josh Hoover is Jace Wright, and like this whole quarterback list is a little shocking to me, but I'll respect it because it's not my list. And I'm not gonna. I wouldn't have Sam Levitt as my highest quarterback. I think the craziest part too is that his highest quarterback, like if I don't remember his list from like 2 years ago, but I'm assuming Caleb Williams was number one. I'm sure you have to put a quarterback. He probably feels the need to put a quarterback in the top 5. But Sam Levitt is your number 5 player in the country returning to.
Yeah,
that's the crazy
that's
part.
horrible. There's also not a lot of O-line representation as a whole. But I guess O-line's hard to project out and like measure if you're not like a true scout.
I think you have to be a true scout, follow recruiting really well, and then also it's a lot of following the best teams in the country, and like a lot of them right now are using transfers to fill in their O-line gaps. I can think of a couple, like Caden Proctor, Francis Mauinoa. Those guys are going to be monsters for their schools. But offensive line in general, there's a reason.
Isaiah World was a transfer.
Yeah, there's a reason there's a joke around that position of like when you give those guys mics, they suddenly become so bubbly and personable and so fun to talk to. It's because no one talks about them and no one talks to them. So when they get the chance to talk, they like take full advantage of it.
Yeah.
The other part I wanted to talk to you about with this list is the big picture of this 2025 season. So these win totals might have changed from the last time I put them down, but I don't think they have. So if you look at, here's a couple notable programs who have, and the number of players they have on the list. So Alabama has 5 players. Oregon has 5 players. Ohio State has 3 players on the top 100. It helps that 2 of them are in the top 3.
It helps.
USC has 2. LSU has 2. Indiana has 5. Georgia has just 2. So I don't know. Does that mean we need to be hammering Georgia unders? Does that mean we need to be hammering the Oregon over or the Indiana over? I probably wouldn't hammer the Oregon over just because it's 10.5 already.
Yeah, it's just so tough to.
But like Indiana theoretically has the same amount of players in returning on this list, and their win total is 8.5.
There's something about this list that I like a lot, kind of to your point. So because it's returning players for your team. It's not new, not incoming freshmen, not transfers. The teams with high numbers, this is kind of the proof of like we develop and we like we're not transfer portal we develop. So like some of these schools like Indiana having 5, I think a lot of people kind of, including myself last year, just kind of like, oh yeah, transfer season worked out for you. They have 5 players that are back this year from that team. I think that gives them some confidence that, hey, we're not just some fluky transfer year. We have 5 guys that we've kept now for 2 seasons that are projected to be very good football players. I think like Oregon probably gets a lot of crap for being a transfer school, but I think this also kind of shows that you got 5 guys in this top list. Like you said, I wouldn't touch that over 10.5 is just like there's no reason to sweat a 10 and like an 11 win season for a team. But on the flip side, I think a lot of teams kind of think of like Georgia, LSU, Ohio State as these like just constant refurbishing talent, and they are. But like they kind of think of them as like a stream of talent. I think this list kind of shows that they are maybe a little bit more transfer heavy or big name, like senior heavy than they might appear to be online. So it does kind of shift narratives, or maybe not shift, but like unveil the curtain of a lot of like incorrect narratives that people have like on social media and just the talking spaces, which is exciting. I think it means more to have a lot of players on this list. I think I'd feel like, for instance, the Indiana 8.5. I'd have to look at the schedule, but you have 5 returning players that are top 100 players. You should be pretty damn good next year. And I think it just shows volatility in those like USC with 2 on this list, win total 7.5. If you feel strongly one way or the other, that's a good line to bet. If you're confident they're going to stink or you're confident they're going to be really good. But also to me, that's just like, that's so volatile. I would like, if you're relying on that many incoming freshmen, that many transfers to be your talent, it's so hard to tell like how that's going to play out. Obviously, it depends on how well your coaches can glue these guys together. Your schedule at this
Just look
day and
at
age
Florida
plays a big
State
part
the
of it.
last 2 years. So just look,
Yeah,
just look
well,
at Florida State the last 2 years. One year they went 13-1 with all those transfers and new kids. The next year they took a shit. Like
yeah,
there's no other way to
that's
put
big,
it.
nice.
I guess the question, based off of what you're saying, is it more important for us to take stock on the teams that have a lot compared to a little? Because I think I remember Georgia, Kirby Smart, 2021. I'm gonna go on a tangent here. One of the funniest parts of the Georgia football program is the fact that after they won the national championships or when they win big games, they always say, "No one believed in us," and then everyone looks around and says, "We've had you number one for like 30 straight weeks."
We all pegged you as the champion.
We picked you as the champion, man. Everyone believed, but that shows how much of a lunatic Kirby Smart is, and how much he keeps putting that chip on his players' shoulders. So there's a famous story about in 2021, Kirby basically talked about how they had very few preseason All-Americans picked for picked for those lists, or like very few like preseason All SEC teams, and that team might have been one of the best teams we've ever seen. And a bunch of guys from that team ended up getting drafted that year and the year after. So I feel like having less guys on this list might just mean you have a bunch of guys no one knows about. But
Yeah,
if you have a lot of guys and you are also doing a good job of like building out the rest of your roster, like you're not top heavy, I think we should be high on you. Like I think Oregon probably, I would imagine Evan Stewart was one of those 5. Unfortunately, he's out for the year. But there's a lot of guys on that roster that no one knows about because Dante Moore's not on the list. If Dante Moore is who we think he's going to be, if he's not draft next year, he's going to be high up on this list next year. So like, there's a lot of guys that just aren't on this list. And if your coach does a good job, not only bringing in top talent, but also surrounding it with good top talent that just people don't know about yet, I think you should be high on the teams with a lot.
I completely agree. I think the teams that have a lot, I feel confident they're going to be good. The teams that don't have a lot, just they open the door for a lot of volatility. I think if you have a lot, I can confidently say Oregon, Alabama are probably going to be good football teams this year. They have 5 guys on this list. I feel safe saying they're going to be good football teams. Georgia, like last week, Georgia was your 6-60. That was your pick for a team we kind of all expect to shoe in for the playoff that might not make it. This list kind of could potentially back that up a little bit. Obviously, I think with those big schools that don't have a lot, that my takeaway would be like very interesting. Let's dive into those because it could be like you said, it could just be they have a lot of elite transfers that came in that just didn't get to make this list, or elite freshmen who are going to make a difference that didn't make the list. Maybe it's just they have a lot of undiscovered talent. Maybe you're like, oh man, like all this 4 and 5 star depth they have that just haven't shown it off as much. Like that's kind of what happened in that 2021 season. So those are like, hey, let's do more research. But the teams that have a lot, I think I'm confident in saying like, yeah, they're going to be very good football teams this year.
Yeah, you're probably right about like the volatility aspect of it. I think like even just like looking at the list in general. Yeah, I mean LSU, you would hope that there's just a bunch of guys on that defense that we don't know about. Like two players in the top, two players on this list for LSU is pretty crazy, and we
Yeah,
haven't
and
had. Good.
And we know Nussmeier's won, so it would be interesting.
Yeah,
I guess I don't have the whole full 100 pulled up right now, but I would be curious to see who the other one was.
we haven't had. I think one of the other aspects of this whole like looking at this list is you hear all the time these days is like, is the era of the dominant team in college football done? Are we done seeing? And I'm not saying the 2019 LSU. Like Sark came out at the SEC coaches meetings and said, I don't think there's going to be an undefeated team ever again, or undefeated champion. And if there is, man, they were probably the best team ever. So that lends its hand into this argument of Kirby Smart last year. He basically complained about the top programs in the country aren't losing their top guys to the portal or to NIL in what they're losing is their second string or their third, like, and they're when you lose your when a guy gets hurt off your first string, you no longer have the second string to try to pull him up, hope that can quell the issues. You now are stuck with going with an undeveloped, inexperienced kid potentially from your third string, to try to just throw him into the fire, play football at for the SEC or whatever program you're at. So I say all that to say it kind of shows like there's no like uberly dominant teams in college football this year, and there's not going to be for a long time, I presume. There's going to be really good teams, and I think if you have a lot of players returning and you still have the depth that no one knows about, that means you're probably going to be extra good. But
Yeah,
I mean, I guess if I guess like this probably just shows like the good teams are going to be good, but it's like, do they have the depth to be special?
yeah. I think that's what made the Alabamas different. It was, oh, my 5 star Jalen, Tua isn't playing well. Let's bring in Jalen Hurts. Oh, Jalen Hurts isn't playing well. Let's bring back in Tua. Like that's not going to happen anymore. Obviously, I mean, they even end up transferring at the time when transfer portal was difficult and hard to manage as a player. Now, how free it is, you're just not going to have that very often anymore. But to Sark's point, we can use this as a good segue too with Sark. I liked that quote he said. I think I entire Sark's a talking head that I agree with a lot, usually when he has opinions in talking college football. But I really liked that take, and I do agree with him. I think if a team ran the table and went undefeated, obviously regular season, but also including postseason and won a national championship, you could very confidently say that's the greatest team of all time. With how big and difficult conferences are now, Big Ten, SEC, and with an expanded playoff, you're just playing more elite teams. You would go on these insane runs. Like if Ohio State had beaten Oregon and Michigan in the regular season, and then presumably beat Oregon again in the Big Ten championship and went undefeated, we would all be calling them the greatest college football team of all time. Like at this point in time, if you're doing that, you've got to be unbelievably good. And it's going to be with this new playoff. There's a chance you're playing 17, 18 games in the next 4 or 5 years in order to do that,
Yeah,
which would be crazy.
yeah. The Sark is one of my favorite like voices in football. I think he gets a bad rap, and part of that is because of his past, and part of that is because he's the head coach of Texas, so people hate
He's got the
successful,
like
rich.
radiate or aviators, kind
Yeah,
of the big.
like if he was the head coach of Arizona and still having this kind of success, I don't think people would be hating on him as much. I think he'd be beloved. But if you're the head coach of Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia, Oregon, USC, you're just gonna get shit.
Yeah,
But Sark has multiple times come out and like said some like he and Kirby are gonna be very important figures in college football and how the coaches get what they want and like changes in the future. He is also like, we all know what his past. We all know where he struggled and why he had to leave USC and why he essentially had to save his job by taking an analyst job with Nick Saban. The best part of it for me is he's not shy about that. He doesn't hide his past. He tells his players about it, and that's very important to me. And I know this is completely off topic, but like I think that's my like Sark defense for anyone who out there who wants to just give him crap. Speaking of Steve Sarkisian, we got, I don't even know what we're on, maybe round 5 of the program report, round 4 at
Sounds
this point.
Right. 5,
round 5, I think this will fill 15 coaches. So, Jace, program report, round 5. We name 3 coaches. We rank them 1 through 10. Coaching performance, recruiting vibes, program hope, and trajectory. And then a hot seat meter. For the hot seat meter, we'll rank 10 through 1. 1 being you got to go update your resume. 10 being you're safe as can be. So we've done 12 coaches up until now. Our top ranked coach right now is Ryan Day at 956. Dan Lanning's number 2, 948. Josh Heupel at number 3 at an 859. And then I'm not going to go down the whole list. And our bottom 3 coaches are Justin Wilcox at 386, Dave Aranda 518, and Mike Norvell at a 598. Let's kick it off with our first coach. Coach Steve Sarkisian. What's your grade? Wow, we were very even on Sark. Our coaching performance, what you got?
Yeah, Sark in Texas is straightforward. Coaching performance, I got him at 9.3. He's won a handful of playoff games. Won a Big 12 championship right before they came to the SEC. Was incredibly. I mean, they were almost SEC champions. Year 1, went to the championship game. Very competitive team. Not a whole lot to say. I mean, he's been fantastic. Like, he hasn't really slipped up much. He's had a good coaching career. He was good at Washington when he was there as a head coach a couple years back. Yeah, he's a good coach. They've done a good job. They haven't gotten over the hump, though. I think that they want to.
I have a thing for offensive coaches in general. I think it's just more fun seeing. I see the smirk, but I think offensive coaches are. You get to see the creativity. You get to see them coach rather than like you get to see them innovate. And Sark's been innovative. I think I give him a 9.3 for one simple reason. This is like the second or third year in a row we haven't had to hear the offseason, is Texas going to be back? Stupid conversations, because Texas is actually back.
Yeah, great point.
A decade we were like, is Texas back year after year? Well, guess what? They're back. And who brought him back? Steve Sarkisian. 9.3 for both of us. Recruiting vibes, I don't think you can recruit better. He's finished first, 5th and 6th
Something like that.
And we both gave him a 9.8 on recruiting. It's about as good as you can do. I personally he's done everything at Texas, and this is kind of leading into the program hope and trajectory. But he's done everything at Texas other than win a national championship, and he sends for anyone who says recruiting is only because of NIL, cool. I don't care. That's part of the game now. And it's not just because of NIL. You see how many kids they're getting into the NFL, how they're developing. You can't do much better than how they've recruited so far. Program hope and trajectory. What do you have?
Yeah, I'm a 9.9. So just remember, this is not only the program report. We always rank them when we say the ranks, like, oh, Ryan Day's 1. We say the coach's name, but we're also factoring in the program as a whole situation they're in. For Texas and Steve Sarkisian, I have 9.9. I think they're as perfectly built. They're exactly where Texas football should be in like the best way possible. You're in a state that has probably the most talent of any state in terms of high school. You're the premier choice of those kids. So, I mean, you're pretty much every year you can recruit anybody you want. You're getting all 5 stars, 4 stars you're going after. You're going to be top 5 in recruiting every single season. You're going to be one of the favorited destinations for high-level transfers. You're producing a ton of NFL talent. Your depth chart is just chock full of talent. I think like Arch Manning is very exciting for the next couple of years. Steve Sarkisian's a young coach. I think him and Texas fit really well together. I imagine he'll be there for quite a long time. That's going to be a program that's going to be national championship contender every single year. That's as kind of strongly built as you can have a program be.
I gave him a 9.5, and I don't disagree with anything you said. I think a 9.9 would probably be a conversation we had off camera, and I'm going to steal your take, if they were in the Big 12, or if they were in a different conference. Like, I just think you could be as good as possible, but then does that mean you're constantly going to win the conference with Georgia, Alabama, LSU, even Ole Miss on their window years? Like, it's going to be tough, and they're going to have the teams for it. They're going to have the coaching staff for it. They're going to have the quarterbacks for it. But that doesn't mean it's a year in, year out kind of thing for them. So I gave him a 9.5. Doesn't take anything away. We both gave him a 10 and a hot seat meter. He's brought them back, and they are back, and he's not going to be fired anytime soon. So, Jace, we have a new number one head coach. That brings Steve Sarkisian to a 9.70 score. Ooh. It's a number one head coach convincingly on our program report, because Ryan Day became the number one head coach last week on our list at a 9.56, but that was just over Dan Lanning's 9.48. So we're going from 9.7 to 9.56. That's a convincing number one right now. Number two, let's go to Michigan State. I see your cup already. Jonathan Smith.
Yeah, this is for you, Jonathan Smith.
A bit of a curious. I like the cup, man. It's kind of sick.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. My sisters went to Michigan State, so shout out.
Shout out. It's a really interesting conversation for Jonathan Smith. And I think, like, outside of just these four categories, we need to have a conversation about him in general, like why he took that job, where that program is, and what Michigan State fans should expect. Because you and I have had so many off-camera conversations about Jonathan Smith. 1 year at Michigan State, did you take into account from Oregon State time or just Michigan State for this list? Go start off with your coaching performance.
I did. I did grab some of his Oregon State years in my evaluation because 1 year at MSU wasn't 5 and 7. They weren't great by any means, but I mean, they were. I'll put it nicely. They were not a good roster. They could say a lot worse about it. They didn't have a lot of talent. All the talent was either incoming freshmen like Nick Marsh, or it was the players that came with Jonathan Smith, Jack Belling, Aiden Childs, kind of were their main players. I gave him a 7.6, which I think you could even go higher. I think 5 and 7, I just kind of weighed on me a little bit. But even at Oregon State, his final few years there, he took a program that has little to no NIL money, little to no recruiting ground to stand on. It's a small school. It's a small engineering school in a small town in Oregon. And he put that thing into the top 25 year after year after year. He got DJ Ungalele to go out there. I mean, he did truly, they were winning 10 plus games a year. He did truly a phenomenal job there. If you were just his Oregon State years, that coach performance probably could have been like 8.4, 8.5 with just what he was doing with so little. 2 stars, 3 stars, that kind of thing. Last year at Michigan State, I think they would have liked to see a bowl game, and they did lose some games they had no business losing. They did choke like that Boston College game early in the season. I don't know if that's more Jonathan Smith as it. They had some Aiden Childs just made some young quarterback bad decisions, but I'll go 7.6 for all what I just said.
Jonathan Smith is going to. I gave him an 8.1 coaching performance, and that is a shocking thing to say to someone who's 3 games under 500 lifetime. But if you want to talk about Jonathan Smith, 2-10 in year 1 at Oregon State in 2018, 5-7 year 2, 2-5 in the 2020 COVID shortened year, then 7-6, 10-3, 8-4. I don't think, and we talked about it before. I'm pretty high on him in general, but we follow the Pacific Northwest a lot, right? That's fair to say. Yeah. I think as the years went by with Jonathan Smith at Oregon State, you saw his you saw his plan working. You saw the team getting more physical. You saw the team developing. He's never going to go out and get the 5-star kid. He might get one, but that kid's probably from the city or from the state and has grew up a lifetime Michigan State fan. But what he's going to do is he's going to develop your team. And then I think once your team is developed, I think the only disappointing part of him leaving for Michigan State was we didn't see his next move at Oregon State. Because he would have had Damian Martinez, DJU, and his full roster back last year at Oregon State if he would have stayed. Not only like he built the foundation early on, lost a lot, then grew. It wasn't trying to microwave anything. It was trying to make sure everything is set in stone, everything's in a good place before he takes the next step. That's the only disappointing part. Like, I wish we got to see what he would have done next, but we'll get to see that at Michigan State if they're patient enough. He's not going to microwave Michigan State, and that'll lead into our next thing. So Michigan State fans might get annoyed or frustrated. He's not going to microwave it, but he's going to build it right. So I gave him an 8.1. You gave him a 7.6 coaching performance. Really wild about a guy who's 3 games under 500, but I think that just shows how much you and I believe in him.
Agreed.
Recruiting vibes. Kind of what I just said, but do you have any more comments about recruiting vibes?
No, I'll save my commentary on recruiting for program hope and trajectory. I'm at a 6.0. It's mostly going to be 3 stars for him. Low hanging fruit 4 stars, guys that he can get nearby. He's not going to wow you with classes that are going to be in the top 10s, things like that. But he'll recruit in the top 20 to top 35 pretty consistently with just getting quality 3 stars year in, year out. And he's a decent transfer portal coach as well. He sends guys to the NFL, especially guys who have like been under the radar most of their careers and then are looking to take that next step. I think he relates well with those guys and does a good job getting them into the NFL. Look at Damian Martinez. Silas Bolden went to Texas after Jonathan Smith left Oregon State. He's going to have Jack Belling's going to be an NFL tight end pretty soon here. Aiden Childs on his potential way to being an NFL QB. We'll see. But yeah, he's not going to recruit crazy, but he's going to recruit solid.
What I am curious about, so I gave him a 6.24 recruiting vibes. Kind of the same thing. He's not going to go crazy, but one of the things I'm curious about is at a program that has more resources, at a program that has more of an ability to be aggressive and be a change maker in recruiting, like Michigan State compared to his Oregon State times. Does that change? Year one, I think some Michigan State fans were frustrated with their recruiting class. It wasn't the best, but it also wasn't bad. It was just him laying a foundation, getting a lot of kids, and getting his type of guys to be on that roster. But I almost wonder, like, when he took the Oregon State job, guess what? He was an alum of Oregon State. He knows all the coaches, all the high school coaches in the state. He knows all the high school. He knows how to recruit on the West Coast. He was an OC at UCLA and Washington. He had been in the Pac-12 conference for a very long time as a player and as a coach. So he knew how to recruit and how to win in that conference. I almost wonder, year one, was his head a little underwater? But I just gave him a 6.24. There's a lot more to come and a lot more he can show us in the future. We just haven't seen him much at Michigan State yet. Mm-hmm. Go for program hope. How hopeful should Michigan State fans be?
I got him at a 7.5. This was the Jonathan Smith program hope was what I was most excited to talk about on this rundown here. I think he's going to bring this program back to what they can expect with like that Mark D'Antonio. And I think that's when Michigan State's the most fun. I don't think Michigan State ever will be. I hate saying it because I have a lot of friends and family who are big Spartans, and I've been a fan of them my whole life as well. But I don't think they're ever going to be at State or a reload just every single year program. I think at their best, their window years, but still good football. Like when it's not the window, kind of at those peak Mark D'Antonio. I think when Michigan State win seasons,
8 to 10 win seasons, and then take advantage of your window year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like when those Mark D'Antonio days were, humming along, they were never recruiting 5 and 4 stars and 5 stars. It was still 3 stars. Like Le'Veon Bell, I think his only other offer was Middle Tennessee State, and he was like a no-name offer. And D'Antonio found him and brought him in. And obviously he was a phenomenal college and NFL running back, but I think that's like going to be what Jonathan Smith's going to do. He's gonna find the 3 stars that fit him, that fit his offense, that fit his defense, that fit his style, but more so like the mental aspect of like I want guys who are going to get here and work their ass off. Because I think Jonathan Smith knows, and the proof is in his teams. He's taken those 3 stars, developed them into either sending them to a bigger program or sending them to the NFL. Oregon State, for how much NFL talent they have compared to like the school, is pretty astounding if you go to look at it. Like they have a pretty high rate of NFL players considering they're all like 2 and 3 star recruits. So I think he'll do that similar thing at Michigan State because it's never going to be. I don't think it'll really ever be a top dog like reload every year. I 7.5 them, kept them under 8, but like you said, they have some really wealthy alumni. It wouldn't be hard for them to get a little NIL and maybe start dipping into that 4-star pool. There's a lot of talent in the state of Michigan as well, especially in the Detroit area. They could get that thing moving pretty well.
He strikes me as a coach who would be uncomfortable jumping in fully into the like 5 and 4 stars, like only recruit that way. Like because he strikes me as a guy who's like very intentional with the kids he's committing, and
that's a great way to put it.
He needs a certain body type for this position. He needs a certain speed for this position. He's very intentional about it. I gave him a 7.4 for program hope and trajectory. That's not to say they're not going to meet everything under Jonathan Smith, all their goals under Jonathan Smith. I just think we've only seen 1 year of it, And what I know is he found a way to bring back a dead program. He brought in top tier offensive linemen, NFL running backs, NFL quarterbacks, and NFL tight ends to Corvallis, Oregon. I think he can get guys to Lansing or East Lansing.
Yeah.
I'm excited about 3 years from now, Jonathan Smith. See where Michigan State is then. See, I promise you to everyone in the Big Ten, you can still beat them in 3 years. But if he's there and he's building the right way and they were patient with him, they're going to be a pain in the ass. Like they're just going to always hang around. And you might be up by a lot or down by a lot, but they're just always going to be there. And then if he has a lead on you, he's a good in-game coach too. Hot seat meter, we both gave him an 8. I'm a little curious about your take. My take is the same thing I've said for three points now. They have to be patient with it. Like obviously, if it shits the bed again this year and next year, sure, it'll like he'll probably be fired. But at the same time, if they're patient with him, let him build the way he wants to. One of the reasons Oregon State became as successful under him as they were is because they have the luxury of being patient. They haven't had success in a long time, so they were like, build us the right way. If Michigan State and their fans can be patient with Jonathan Smith, I don't expect him to. This should be a 10 in my opinion.
I agree. I think same. I give him an 8 for the same exact reason. The patience. I personally would have him as a 10 in the sense that I would never get rid of. I'm very confident he's going to get this thing going back where it used to be. But I do think like I do have a lot of my family and friends are willing to be a little patient, but you can tell the impatience is there. They're kind of ready. Like I need it now. We want it now. I'm not impressed. I haven't seen what I want to see. So I think that's kind of why I docked him for an 8. I've said it to them a million times. I'll say it again right now. Just like you've said it too. Be patient with him. You're not going to just turn a bunch of 3 stars into first-round draft picks in one night. It's going to take 3-4 years to do that. And like you said, that was a dead program. Kenneth Walker was like the only. If it weren't for Kenneth Walker, that program probably doesn't win more than 7 games in like a decade. It just they kind of. I don't want to say got lucky, but he was just an unbelievable running back that kind of got them that one big year that I think kept some hope among the fan base. And I think that almost is hurting Jonathan Smith because like, we'll see, we can do it randomly, but I don't think people realize that that's more of like a stone's throw at a dartboard than it was like genuinely a real football program like turning around. I think that was just more of I hate to say a fluke because I love my family and friends and I like the program a lot, but that was more of a fluke than it was like the real deal for them.
That brings Jonathan Smith to a 7.36 final score for us on the program report. That gives him That slots him right in the middle of our head coaching rankings. He's above Kalani Sitake and just below Brian Kelly. I think that fits him for now.
That feels fair.
Do you think, in hindsight's 2020, but do you think he wishes he waited like a month before he took the Michigan State job? Not a slight on Michigan State, but for those that don't know, a month later, what came open? UCLA came open. Washington came open. Not that it would have been easy for him mentally to take those jobs from Oregon State. Maybe it was easier just to rip the Band-Aid off and go to the Midwest. But at the same time, like the Pac-12 footprint has been his home. So I'm not saying does he regret going to Michigan State, but do you think he ever wakes up and is like, shit, man, could have gotten the UCLA job?
I think UCLA, no. I know you're much higher on the UCLA job than I am. I think the UCLA job is very unattractive.
Am I?
I think UCLA job is one of the worst Power Four jobs. Personally.
Okay, so it's because you think the job is so low, you think I'm
like
high on
I'm saying you're higher than me. Sorry, not that you're high on them, but you're higher than I am. I think
I was like, I didn't know I was.
No, higher than me. I think it's a really bad job. Like, I think it sounds nice because it's like LA talent is there for sure, and it is. But there are so many powerhouse schools that's like their hotbed. That like to take over a program that hasn't been alive in 30 years, like to just try and get in there and like, I mean, Chip Kelly sucked there, and I know a lot of people clown Chip Kelly, but look, like a lot of people are like, oh, it's just because Chip Kelly didn't have the juice. Well, he just won a national championship at Ohio State pretty easily with a crazy impressive offense, like his first year there. So he still has it. I just think that's like a dead program. Washington, I think he might have some regrets on, because I also think UCLA and LA don't fit the Jonathan Smith vibe at all. I don't think like going to LA being like, I'm looking for hardworking Midwestern style 3-stars is going to be the way to recruit LA. It works at Oregon State because Oregon State, as we both kind of know, is a Midwest style school on the West Coast.
You try like agriculture, engineering. You have no idea where the actual campus is until like you come up to it. You're like, oh shit, like, oh, this is the campus.
And I think Washington has a little West Coast flash mixed with kind of like a Midwest vibe to it. So I think Washington would have been a great fit, and I think that's probably the job he's like, would have been nice. Michigan State, I do think, is a great fit for him. I think it's when it was at its best, it was that like Mark D'Antonio style, and Jonathan Smith really reminds me of him. So I do think it's a good fit for the school and for him and what he's trying to do. Washington, I think, might have wanted to go more flash national championship route, where Michigan State's more like, let's get back to what our roots. I think he's a little bit more adept for that. But
what's incredible to me is you and I have talked so much already about them needing to be patient with him. But one of the things that fits him in Michigan State, and it did in Corvallis, was he can kind of hide and build the program quietly, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, are they that good? Like, did I just put Michigan State in my top 25 again? Like, when people put Oregon State for the first time in years in their top 25 a couple years ago, they're like, is that right? Is that a misprint? Or are we supposed to be putting Oklahoma State? Or is that the wrong OSU? Like, what are we doing? By the way, thank God he didn't go to Washington, because I really like Jonathan Smith, and I don't want to start like having a bunch of guys like going from Corvallis to Washington I didn't want to start having rivals with coaches I really respect. So that's 2 coaches down. We got one more coach, Dabo Swinney, Clemson. A really, really tricky one.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack with Dabo. So kick us off with your coaching performance.
I think this is going to be surprisingly high for some people. I have him at a 9.65. He has won many ACC championships, and he has 2 rings, and that's a big deal. We talk about it. Not many active coaches have a ring at all. He is one of the 2 with multiple. The other one being Kirby Smart, who I think is also fair to say one of the top coaches in college football. He's been, other than a few iffy years recently, he has been such a power in college football. Like that's one of those teams that, other than, like I said, those 2-3 years recently, over the course of the last 15, they've kind of been a top 10 staple. It took a program that was kind of nothing. Clemson didn't really have any history prior to him getting there. Turned that thing into what is now like one of the powerhouses of college football. So 9.65. He's done really impressive work for the last 15 years there.
Right. I think this will get us some feedback of like you can't actually possibly put them there. But like you said, Clemson wasn't anything really without Dabo. Dabo built Clemson. Dabo built the brand. I give him a 9.45, so I'm lower than you. Part of that is just the last, like I had to dock him for the last couple of years. And the funny part is the last like 5 years, let's see, since 2020, 10-2, 10-3, 11-3, 9-4, 10-4, with a 3-3 bowl game record. So you're telling me a pretty consistent 10-win season is the reason to dock someone? I'm sorry. That's only because his previous 5 years, 2015, 14-1, national championship loss. 2016, 14-1, national championship win. 2017, 12-2 with a Sugar Bowl loss. 2018, 15-0, national championship win. 2019, 14-1, national championship loss. I say all that to say, his coaching performance is on a level you can't dock him from. You can dock him for how he wants to build a program these days. You can dock him for recruiting, especially because last year's recruiting class was strangely bad. Mm-hmm. I think this year's Clemson team, and we'll get into it for program hope and trajectory, should be right up there in terms of favorites to win a natty. But that's, in terms of the past, his coaching performance is as good as anyone's. Recruiting vibes, Jace. What you got?
I am at 8.2. That's, if you were to put that on a chart, it's probably going down though. It's a downtrending 8.2. He typically recruits very well. They've like brought in a lot of 5 stars in the past. Does a good job. You said this past recruiting class was not his best work, and I think his old school mindset about college football is probably gonna. That's why I said downtrending. I think it's gonna get worse over time. But as long as Dabo Swinney's that head coach, and as long as they're competing for national championships, like, you're going to get talent. Like, you're going to bring talent in. They still recruit at a decently high level. It's still Clemson. You know, if you're a 5-star and Clemson calls, you listen. So for that, I give him an 8.2.
Give him a 7.48. Easy, simple answer. 26th in the country last year in recruiting, I believe. Regularly before that, it was, I think the last couple of years before that was 11th and 11th and 10th. And then when they were really humming, though, they were top 5. Yeah. Top 6, top 7. The scary part for them is they have built such a top-heavy, senior-laden team this year that I don't know. And then the fact that they don't maximize every avenue of player acquisition is scary. Of like, they did take a transfer this year, so congrats to Dabo. But the fact that we're sitting here June 23rd of 2025 and Dabo's coming off, entering a very pivotal year for Clemson. They're entering a massive season that they have a lot of expectations.
Let's jump into program hope here. I think
you're right.
I like where you're going, but let's transition quick. Give me your number and then keep going.
You're right. I have a 7.9, and you have a 7.8. A similar reason. It's mainly because where I was going with that, like, Dabo's entering such a massive year, and they didn't recruit the way. They didn't recruit to replenish that talent that they're going to lose after this year. So I don't know what Dabo and the Clemson are going to be after this season. I expect this season to be 10-2 to 14-0, 15-0. After this year, man, I'm sure they're going to be good. Name the quarterback. Actually, I guess you can, because DJU wasn't. I was going to make a joke, like, name the quarterback before Kate Klubnik, because it feels like he's been there for 20 years. But genuinely, they've been. I don't know what the future holds after this season for Clemson. So I have a 7.9. that's why this one was tricky.
Yeah, I completely agree. It doesn't feel necessarily, it feels like to me, this is Dabo Swinney's like final swing at a national championship. It very well could not be, and he could have things up his sleeve that I'm not aware of. That's very plausible, but it kind of feels like that's like you said, like they don't seem to have like the successor quarterback. Like when they had Trevor Lawrence, they knew they were going to have DJU. When they had DJU, they knew they had this kid, Klubnik kid. Even like running backs, like with ETN, and they knew they were going to transition to Mafa. Oh, blanking on the white kid that's now with the Eagles.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Blanking on his name. Like you have Will Shipley. Then they knew they were going to have 5-star Will Shipley, and then you knew you were going to have Phil Maffa. They've always had these like successor, even like T. Higgins and Justin Ross, like at wide receiver. You have Antonio Williams now, but this year you have like the Cade and Antonio Williams, but we don't have those successors that comes in. They always had a 5-star stud just like ready to go, and they don't really have that anymore. Even defensively, like when they lost Felon Farrell and kind of that crew, then they had like Brady Breeze and that crew come in. So it just feels like they no longer have that succession, and like you said, desire to like stay out of the portal and stay out of kind of the big NIL conversations. Is it going to hurt them, help them? Either way, to be determined. I don't think it goes well, which is why we're both in the 7s for their trajectory. I respect it though. I respect that he sticks to his roots. I respect that he's stuck by his word. I think there's some value in that, and he's like one of the last few people in college football that give hope for like a traditional style of the game.
Look, if you think he's going to be like, you can respect it. You can also say he's not maximizing his program's ability to win, and I respect a man's ability to choose what he wants to do for building his college football program, for anything. So and Dabo's earned all of our respects with the way he wins. Dabo Swinney has forgotten more today about college football. Just today, it's 9 a.m. on the West Coast, than I will ever know. So I'm not going to disrespect how he sees the best way to build his team.
He's got 2 of these.
So. He's got two of those. For hot seat, you gave him an 8. I gave him a 7.85. Is that correct? My sheet disappeared.
That is correct.
I gave him a 7.85. So I almost think you could give him a 10 here. He's not going to be fired by Clemson, point blank, period. So it just depends on, is the pressure from the fan base going to be high because they're not maximizing every avenue to compete? Or at least this year, one thing I forgot to mention is, for a long time, Dabo was very loyal to his coordinators and to his in-house staffers. He would like to promote from within. Well, now he's got Garrett Riley for like year 2 or 3, and he just brought in Tom Allen from Penn State. He's going to get the best of the best rather than trying to stick with his Clemson family. So there is hope that there's some change coming. I don't think he's going to get fired ever at Clemson. It's going to be his decision when they part ways.
Agreed. The 8 for me comes from, like, I could see a world where he refuses to adapt and fans get annoyed enough and the program starts to slip enough that it's kind of a respectful conversation between him,
like
AD.
A parting of ways.
Yeah, like, hey, I think it's time. We don't want to fire you. Like, I think it's, I think you've run your course here. We want to move a different direction. So that's why it's an 8. I think he's probably a couple years removed from that, or just like retiring. Maybe if they win a national championship this year, and he's like,
you're probably right. Dabo's probably a couple years out from becoming going down he's our consultant now. Like, like retiring and becoming the consultant. But I just think he's such a madman for football that he's gonna end up being a head coach again at another school.
Or he could do like a Ron Rivera scenario, kind of just plug into that GM role.
Yeah, because that's where I want Dabo Swinney, recruiting and avoiding the transfer portal. Not
maybe
coaching.
It would be analytics GM focused than it was recruiting.
So that puts Dabo Swinney at an 8.29. Once again, I really like how our coaches are stacked up on this list. That puts him as our 4th best coach right now. just below Ryan Day, fifth best coach, below Steve Sarkisian, Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, Josh Heupel. He's just above Mike Elko. So if you asked me 3 years ago, Dabo's score probably would have been. I think he would have been the number one coach on our list. But I think that just shows the. Obviously, Nick Saban would have been number one. But that just shows the evolution of Clemson, or the de-evolution, I guess, or the decline of Clemson for the last couple of years. Let's quickly finish this off. We're hour 17 in. One game, Jace. This one, August 30th. Syracuse goes to Knoxville. Tennessee is a 12.5-point favorite. Both teams are rolling out new quarterbacks. Kyle McCord is no longer at Syracuse. Fran Brown's looking for a second quarterback in his second year there. Joey Aguilar was traded essentially by UCLA for Nico to Tennessee. Who you got?
This is one of the tougher ones because as people are probably, if we have recurring listeners, you are probably familiar with. I love consistency and lack of turnover early games. This is one of the few games we talked about where both teams had a lot of roster turnover and production turnover from last year, which is it's a little difficult. It's hard to project out. 12.5 points is also just the perfect book saying F you, try to make a decision here. I've gone back and forth. Before the show, I was kind of leaning Syracuse when we were just chatting away about this game. But I'm sitting here thinking about it. I might just go Tennessee for the sole purpose of Syracuse in Knoxville week 1. Could be a tough environment. They're going to be a very young team.
I think Fran Brown's crazy enough to make it fun, though.
I think it'll be a great game. That's the 12.5. It's one of those Syracuse could be within 6 or 7 the whole game, and then just some bullcrap late touchdown, and then there's the miss. I'll go Tennessee. I know we need some more differences too. Otherwise, there's just going to be the Jason Farbode ranking or predictions, not our own individuals. So I'll go Tennessee for fun here.
Hey, the differences will come. I'm not going to force feed them, but I'm going to take Syracuse.
I'm split here, so
they're not in Knoxville. This is the Aflac kickoff game in Georgia.
Oh, it's not in Knoxville. Okay, I just saw Tennessee was the home team, so I assume that does change things a little bit.
That changes things. Fran Brown's going down to Georgia with his team. One thing I've learned this year and this week, and I haven't looked too much into it, and so I didn't know what to think in general. Was Tennessee is a popular under bet right now. They're 8.5 wins. A lot of people aren't believing in them, which is why I'm surprised that the spread is so massive. But I will take Syracuse with the 12.5 in Georgia against Tennessee. I just think that game can be a lot of fun. Hopefully, Fran Brown is just such a lunatic that
he's fun.
Syracuse wasn't supposed to be as good as they were last year, and he made them good. So I'm excited for this game. All right, I think hour 19 in. That's about our sweet spot. Jace, I rambled a little bit. You saved me today. I appreciate you. I think I finished 2 glasses of water during this show. It definitely needed my liquids and hydrate up. Got a tea time in an hour. It's gonna be a good day, but definitely a slow morning.
That's all right. Nothing that a little bit of sunlight on the golf course can't fix.
Exactly.
Get back on the saddle, get a transfusion, you'll be all good.
Exactly. Well, that does it for episode 11 of Flag for Discussion. If you liked what you heard, if you appreciate the fact that I'm constantly apparently in different locations every time we record, I got a Christmas tree behind me. If you like any of what we talked about today, you can please hit us up on our socials. Let us know about it. Comment on the YouTube channel. Flagged for Discussion on YouTube, F for Discussion on everywhere else, Twitter, TikToks. Those will be going out this week. And we have a lot more coming up. We have some plans and some ways to make the show extra fun. I think that's all I got. Jace, you got anything else?
No, I like this. This is a great show. I was excited for our program report. We had some fun coaches. Dabo's got some wiggle room of what people think about him. I'm curious to hear. Like, I'm sure Dabo is probably one of the first coaches. I have a feeling people will really strongly disagree with some of the like rankings we gave him. So if you made it this far to listen to our Dabo opinions, let us know what you think. Because that's the first time when I was going through it, I was like, people might strongly disagree with what we have to say about Dabo, just because he's very polarizing right now.
I'm not gonna
That's
lie.
why I asked about it.
I'm not gonna lie. I went through like when I do my rankings individually per coach. I sometimes wonder like, is that too high? Is that too low? But then I go back and I look at like the list forming, and I think watching the list form every time we do this is very telling. Like early on with the 3 coaches or 6 coaches, you couldn't tell much, but we're at 15 coaches now. Dabo slots in at number 5, and that's where I think the program should be looked at as of 2025. You know, Justin Wilcox is last. Sark is
Yeah,
number 1. I think the one that people will complain about the most is Sark versus Ryan Day, and how much higher
yeah.
Sark is than Ryan Day. But you know what? That's a conversation for another day. Ryan Day. But like I said, if
But
you liked what you watched, if you like what you heard today, saw today, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Um, all of the socials, all of the platforms. That's all I got. From me, Farbode, from Jace. It's been a long morning already. Let's make it a great rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in. It's been Flag for Discussion.